Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling a really fascinating topic, the Indian presidential election. Now, you might think electing a president involves a direct public vote, right? That's common in many places.
Sure, that's often the case.
But India does things, well, differently. It has this incredibly unique, quite intricate system.
It really is, and it reflects India's federal nature and diversity.
Exactly. So our mission today is to sort of cut through that complexity, make it clear, and maybe share some surprising facts about why it's set up this way.
And understanding this mechanism is, I think, pretty crucial if you want to grasp India's democracy properly. It's significant, but often misunderstood.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting right at the top, the office of the president.
Good place to start.
So the Constitution, Articles 52 to 62, lays it all out. The president serves a 5-year term.
Right.
And here's something interesting right away. They can actually be reelected. Multiple times, technically.
Unlimited times, yes, although that's rare in practice.
We'll get to that. Eligibility-wise, what are we looking at? You've got to be an Indian citizen, obviously, at least 35 years old, qualified to be a member of the Lok Sabha, that's the lower house.
Which connects the office to the legislative side, in a way.
And importantly, you can't hold any office of profit under the government, state, or central.
Yes, that office of profit bit is key. It's about preventing conflicts of interest, ensuring impartiality.
Right.
So the requirements, they paint a picture, experienced, connected to the legislature conceptually, but detached from direct government roles. It really sets up a specific kind of head of state.
Okay, now for the part that often surprises people. How is the president actually elected? It's not the general public voting directly?
No, it's indirect. Through an electoral college.
Right, the Electoral College. So who is in this college? Who gets the vote?
It's composed strictly of elected members. That's the key word.
Okay, so who exactly?
You have the elected members of both houses of parliament, the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. Then, the elected members of the state legislative assemblies, the MLAs, from all 28 states.
Okay, all states covered.
Plus the elected members of legislative assemblies from union territories that actually have legislatures. So Delhi, Puducherry, and Jammu and Kashmir.
So only elected representatives.
Precisely.
Which means it's just as important to know who is not included, who's excluded from this process.
Absolutely. No nominated members, whether in parliament or state assemblies, they don't get a vote here.
Okay, no nominated folks.
Also, members of legislative councils, the MLCs, and states that have upper houses, they're out too.
Right, because they aren't all directly elected in the same way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And crucially, if a state assembly is dissolved at the time of the election, its members can't participate either.
That makes sense.
And this focus on only elected members, it says something important, doesn't it?
What's the takeaway there?
It underlines that the president's legitimacy stems from people who have a direct mandate from the voters. It filters out appointments or bodies not directly chosen by the public for this specific election. It reinforces the representative nature.
Okay, so we have the voters, their Electoral College. Now, how do they actually vote? It's not just ticking one box.
No, it's a system called proportional representation by means of the single transferable vote, STV.
STV. Sounds complex.
It has its intricacies, but the core idea is preferential voting.
Meaning?
Each voter doesn't just pick one candidate. They rank them. Preference 1, preference 2, preference 3, and so on.
Ah, okay, so you list your choices in order.
Precisely. And it's all done via secret ballot, of course.
Standard secret ballot. But the real complexity, or maybe the genius, is how these votes are valued, right? Not every vote is equal.
Exactly. The value of each vote is calculated to ensure proportionality between the union government and the state governments combined. It's about balance.
How does that work? Let's start with the MLAs, the state legislators.
Okay. The value of an MLE's vote depends on their state's population. But, and this is a big but, it's based on the population figures from the 1971 census.
1971, that seems dated.
It is. It was a decision made back then, partly linked to population control measures, and it hasn't been updated for this purpose. So the formula is state population, as per 1971, divided by the total number of elected MLAs in that state, and then divide that whole thing by 1,000.
Okay, let me process that. Population divided by MLAs, then divide by 1,000.
Right. So the example often given is, say, a state had 2 crore population back in 71 and has 200 MLAs. The value of each MLA's vote from that state would be 100.
Got it. So bigger states proportionally have more weight based on those older figures. What about the MPs, the members of parliament?
Their vote value is calculated differently. You take the total value of all the MLA votes from all states combined.
Okay, sum up all that state-level voting power.
And then you divide that total sum by the total number of elected MPs in both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha.
So the MP's vote value reflects the total weight of the states.
Exactly. It creates this intended parity between the states as a whole and the Union Parliament as a whole.
Connecting this to the bigger picture, then, what does this whole weighted system, especially the 1971 census part, tell us?
Well, weighting itself is clearly about federal balance, but the use of the 1971 census figures, that's politically significant. It effectively means states, particularly in the South, that managed population growth better since '71 have less weight per capita today than they might otherwise. States with huge population booms since then haven't seen their presidential voting power increase proportionally.
So it locks in a representation level from decades ago.
It does, and that creates underlying tensions about representation and federalism, reflecting how past political compromises continue to impact the present. It's quite a knotty issue.
Definitely something to chew on. Okay, so we have these weighted preferential votes. How does someone actually win the election?
It's not first past the post. You need to secure a quota, specifically more than 50% of the total value of valid votes polled.
More than 50%, so an absolute majority of the weighted votes.
Correct. The formula is simple enough. Winning quota, total value of valid votes polled 2 plus 1.
Okay. What if nobody gets that quota on the first count with just the preference 1 votes?
That's where the transferable part of STV comes in, if no one hits the quota.
Which seems possible with multiple candidates.
Right. Then the candidate with the lowest number of first preference votes is eliminated.
Okay. They're out.
And the ballot papers that had them as preference 1 aren't just discarded. Their second preference votes are looked at.
Ah, so their votes get transferred.
Exactly. Those votes are transferred to whichever remaining candidate was marked as the second preference on those ballots, according to the value of those votes.
And this continues.
Yes. If still no one has the quota, the next lowest candidate is eliminated. And their votes, including any transfer votes they might have received, are redistributed based on the next available preference shown on their ballots, round by round, until one candidate crosses that 50% plus 1 threshold.
Wow. Okay, that is quite a process.
It is. And what's fascinating about it is how it encourages, or rather necessitates, broader appeal.
How so?
Because candidates know they might need second or third preference votes to win. They can't just rely on a narrow base. It pushes towards consensus candidates who are acceptable to a wider range of electors. It prevents someone winning with, say, only 30% of the vote just because the opposition was split.
So it promotes stability and broader acceptance, arguably?
That's the intention behind it, distinguishing it quite sharply from simpler plurality systems.
Okay, before the voting and counting, how does one even get on the ballot? The nomination process.
Right. It's not just deciding you want to run. You need significant backing from within the Electoral College itself.
How significant?
A candidate needs at least 50 electors. These are the MPs and MLAs who can vote to formally propose their name.
Okay, 50 proposers.
And another 50 electors to second the nomination. So you need 100 members of the Electoral College just to get your name officially submitted.
That's a high bar. Filters out non-serious contenders, presumably?
It does. And there's also a security deposit. Currently, it's 15,000.
15,000 rupees.
And if a candidate doesn't secure a minimum threshold of votes, I believe it's 1/6 of the valid votes, they forfeit that deposit.
Another mechanism to ensure seriousness.
Yeah.
And who runs the show?
Yeah.
Oversees all this.
The entire process is conducted and supervised by the Election Commission of India. They handle everything, ensuring it runs smoothly and fairly.
Where does the actual voting happen?
Polling usually takes place in Parliament House in Delhi for the MPs and within the premises of the state legislative assemblies for the MLAs.
Okay, convenient for the electors.
Indeed. And here's a neat detail you mentioned earlier, the ballot papers. They are color-coded.
Right, I remember reading that.
Green ballot papers are for the MLAs.
Green for states.
And pink ones for the MPs.
Pink for Parliament. Helps keep things organized, I imagine.
Definitely. And after polling, all the ballot boxes are brought to Delhi for the counting, which happens under very strict supervision by the Election Commission officials.
That level of central control and oversight must be crucial for such a complex, high-stakes election.
Absolutely. The meticulousness is remarkable. From the distinct ballot colors to the centralized counting, every step reflects the ECI's commitment to integrity in this unique, indirect system. It underscores the effort to maintain balance and fairness.
So the votes are counted, transferred if needed, and we have a winner who has secured the quota. What happens next?
The president-elect then takes the oath of office. This is administered by the Chief Justice of India.
The head of the judiciary administers the oath to the head of state.
Yes. Or, if the Chief Justice is unavailable, the senior-most judge of the Supreme Court steps in.
And then they begin their 5-year term.
Correct. They hold office for 5 years. And an important point, even if the 5 years are up, the incumbent president continues to hold office until their successor officially enters upon the office. Ensures continuity.
No gaps. Okay, let's recap some of those notable facts we touched upon. Re-election.
Constitutionally permitted for an unlimited number of terms.
But in practice?
Only one president, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, the very first president, actually served 2 full terms.
Interesting. Any theories why?
It could be an unwritten convention that has developed, or perhaps just the political dynamics of subsequent elections haven't favored second terms. It's a point of reflection, really.
Indeed. And what if the office becomes vacant midterm? Death, resignation, impeachment?
In that scenario, the vice president immediately acts as president.
So the VP steps up?
Yes, until a new president can be elected, which must happen within 6 months of the vacancy arising. It's a clear line of succession designed for stability.
That constitutional foresight for continuity seems really important.
It definitely is. Prevents any ambiguity or power vacuum.
What a journey, really, through this whole process. It's certainly not simple, but it's incredibly deliberate, isn't it?
Absolutely deliberate. Every layer, every calculation seems designed with the specific context of India in mind.
This deep dive really shows the precision, the unique structure behind choosing India's head of state. It's more than just an election. It feels like a reflection of the country's federal fabric.
And if you connect it to the bigger picture, this complex, indirect, proportionally weighted system really highlights India's deep commitment to balancing its immense diversity. It prioritizes representation, stability, and consensus over, perhaps, simple popular mandate, which you might see elsewhere.
It's built to reflect the nuances of the population through their elected representatives.
Exactly. A uniquely Indian solution, you could say, to the challenge of selecting a head of state in such a vast and varied democracy.
So maybe the final thought for everyone listening is this. What does the specific method, indirect, proportional, weighted votes, the whole intricate dance, tell us about how India approaches balancing diversity and its federal structure compared to other large democracies? Perhaps it suggests that sometimes the most representative path isn't necessarily the most direct one. Something to definitely think about.